Good morning, grade 10s. I hope you guys are all keeping well and that you've had a good week and that you're keeping up to date with your work. I realize that the circumstances that you're doing schooling is very different and very unusual, and it's not the norm, but I encourage you guys to please make the effort to attempt your work every day. Don't let it slip, don't let it slide. It's going to build up and it's just going to be a burden on your shoulders. So please make an effort to do your work every day to keep up to date. Today we are going to be learning how to find the equation of a hyperbola, and you would have seen before that they gave you the equation and you had to draw the hyperbola using the table method, and this is going to be the inverse of that. So they are going to give you a graph, and from that graph you are going to have to determine the equation of the hyperbola. In order to draw a hyperbola, two pieces of information needs to be given. The first one is the asymptote, which is a horizontal line, and it's usually a dotted line. Now remember from the drawing a hyperbola that the asymptote is a line that the graph will never cut. The graph will get really close to it, but it will never actually cut it. And that asymptote is actually the vertical shift. So it's your Q value. So that asymptote tells you how many spaces the graph has moved up or down. So they will give you the asymptote of the graph, and the other thing that they need to give you is one coordinate. Then once you have got those two pieces of information, you need to please remember that you need to find the equation, and it must be in the standard form: y is equal to a over x plus q. Just a reminder how to find the equation. The first thing is that you would substitute your asymptote into the place of q. So your asymptote would be your vertical shift. You would replace q with whatever your asymptote is. Once you have done that, there will be one other coordinate which you will substitute the x value and the y value into your formula, which will leave you with only the a being unknown. You are then going to solve for a, and once you have solved for a, you're going to write your formula in standard form, and you're going to replace the a with whatever you found the a to be, and you're going to replace the q with your vertical shift or your asymptote. We are going to do two examples together. This first one you can find in your textbook, and the first thing you should notice is your horizontal dotted line called your asymptote is at -3, and the second thing you should notice is that you have a coordinate which is 1 and -6. The second example that we're going to do is actually one of your homework questions. It's question A from your homework activity. So you can rewrite it in your book, but you do not need to redo it. So the first thing you should see is that it has no asymptote. The asymptote is actually the x-axis, which means that the graph has not shifted up or down. It is in its original position. So from that you should see that your q value is 0. There's been no vertical shift. And the second thing that you need to notice is that you have got a coordinate which is -2 and -6. I'm going to move over to a video and I'm going to do these two examples with you. Alright, grade 10. So the first example that we're going to do, you saw there that there was an asymptote at -3, and we were given one other coordinate which is 1 and -6. So my first step is to write in standard form. So I'm going to say y is equal to a over x plus q, and that's my standard form for a hyperbola. The next thing I need to notice is my asymptote is at -3. So remember, your asymptote is a line that the hyperbola will never touch, but it comes very close. But what it shows is how many spaces the graph has moved up or down. So it's our vertical shift, which is our q value. So instead of q, we're going to write -3. So I'm going to say y is equal to a over x, and for q I'm going to write -3. And now what I want to do is I want to find the value of a. So I'm going to substitute in this coordinate. I've got the x value and I've got the y value, and I'm going to replace that x and that y with the coordinate. So my y value is negative 6 is equal to a over the x value is 1 minus 3. And we know that anything over 1 stays the same, so it's quite a nice easy one. So the goal now is to get a on its own. So I've got a minus 3, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So negative 6 plus 3 gives me negative 3 is equal to, and remember a over 1 is the same as a. So I've got my q value and I've got my a value, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into standard form. So I'm going to say y is equal to, instead of a, I'm going to write negative 3 over x, and instead of q, I'm going to write minus 3. And that's the standard form. And there I have found the equation of my hyperbola. Okay, moving on to the second example, and this is question A from your homework. So the first thing from the diagram you should have seen is that the graph did not shift up or down. It was in its original position, which means there has been no vertical shift. So the asymptote was at 0. So remember, the asymptote is our q value, so the q value is 0. And then we've got this point, negative 2 and negative 6. So I'm going to write the standard form, y is equal to a over x plus q. I'm going to replace my q with 0. And from there, I'm going to leave the 0 because I don't need to add it. But what I'm going to do now is I want to find the value of a, so I'm going to substitute in this coordinate, the x value and the y value. So instead of y, I'm going to put negative 6 is equal to a, which is what I'm trying to find, over x, which is negative 2 plus 0. I don't need to put the 0. So now I've got a divided by negative 2. The goal is to get a on its own. So to get rid of the divide by negative 2, I need to times by negative 2. So if I times that side by negative 2, you'll see my negative 2's will cancel out. But what I do to the one side, I must do to the other. So I also times that side by negative 2. And then I get negative 2 times negative 6 gives me 12 is equal to a. And then I go back to my standard form. Y is equal to, instead of a, I'm going to put a 12 over x, and then it would be plus q, but it's going to be plus 0, so I don't need to include the 0. And there I have found the equation of my hyperbola. It's actually quite nice and easy, and I don't think there should be any problems. Okay, grade 10s, that brings us to the end of this lesson, and your homework for today will be in your textbook, page 161, exercise 14. You're going to do the whole exercise. It's 8 sums, but please remember that I've already done A with you, so you don't need to redo that. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and guys, please just remember to try and keep up with your work. Try and do a little bit every day. Don't let it build up. It will just be a burden on your shoulders, and you need to be doing a little bit every day. I hope you have a great weekend and stay safe.